Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. Zooming in a little bit more in depth on the idea and concept of projection and how a narcissist will utilize projection as a way to manipulate and control others in their environment. Projection is a concept first discovered by psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud in the early 1300s, where he identified the inner workings of basically the human psyche. And the human psyche is essentially your mind, body, and spirit coming together as one. And the role of projection occurs when a narcissist who is unwilling to process their own sense of shame or sense of insecurity or normal human pain, which essentially every person has a sense of pain and suffering. And some who have been through really, traumatic upbringings will have basically a larger dose of human shame, if you will, operating in their personality than others who were not traumatized, those who were not shamed, those who were not harshly judged, criticized, or neglected, deprived of healthy modeling, or deprived of healthy mirroring in their childhood. So the projection is a tool, or what is called by Freud and known as the psychological community as a defense mechanism. A defense mechanism. So it is a tool which is used in varying degrees, very pronounced though by those who exhibit narcissistic and psychopathic qualities within their personality. It is a defense mechanism that is utilized by the narcissist to essentially thrust on or transfer onto others in their environment so that they don't have to process internally. So something so painful, something so horrific, something which is so difficult for them to face, work through, process, which M. Scott Peck would call legitimate pain, working through legitimate pain. In other words, rather than coming to terms with this, it is buried, it is stuffed, it is repressed down, it is pushed down, boom, 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 boom. It's not existing. In other words, they're denying this experience in them. It is so catastrophic to them. It is perceived as so catastrophic that they push it down, but yet they never deal with it. They never process it so they can release it. That which you don't process stays repressed and smolders and continues to fester. Think of it like an infection. Have you ever had a physical wound that got infected and wasn't treated, wasn't taken care of, wasn't cleansed? It gets infected, it gets red, it gets swollen, it gets pussy, it can become inflamed, and if not treated, it can become, send an incredible infection through an entire body. It's actually very lethal. So that is essentially a festering wound. Now, the likewise occurs on a parallel in the emotional body. If there is a wound that is not processed, if there's a psychological injury, an emotional injury to that person who is traumatized, who is faced with something so severe, be it poverty, be it shaming, be it physical abuse, be it treated as an underdog or less than, or harshly criticized to the point where you're shame-based, it's such a severe wound, and like a poverty of the soul. John Bradshaw basically, calls it also the poverty of the soul. So that which is so traumatic that it is really perceived to be so threatening and so difficult and painful by that person, so that rather than dealing with it and saying, you know what, I overcame that by becoming this, I overcame that poverty. For example, Damon John on the Shark Tank. There's a man who owns his upbringing. He's able to process it. He came from, an impoverished area of Brooklyn, New York. Damon John, if you watch the Shark Tank, for those of you who are international, you can research him. Damon John, a gentleman who, I believe it's the Bronx, New York area, who was able to overcome an incredible amount of poverty through his branding, through his marketing, through developing an incredibly very successful and powerful brand in marketing in the t-shirt industry, the clothing industry, the retail, since now he's become essentially a holding company and is diversified into so many different new products. But Damon John, is there someone who has dealt with an impoverished upbringing, is able to use it successfully and positively. It caused him to work and have an incredible work ethic, and then create a billion-dollar company out of that. So he's able to utilize and embrace that. He did not push it down. He did not repress it. He was able to actually use it and has not lived in denial, did not deny that he had such an experience. So he does not need to project. It is the projection occurs within the individual who is stuffed, who is repressed this trauma, and instead of processing it, embracing it, and let it air out and let it basically dissipate, basically let it fall away from their as a defense mechanism. Projection is utilized by someone who thrusts all that emotion and all that pain onto another so that they process it in their life, and they are then able to is essentially a traumatic bond, essentially, where that person and then feels and experiences all that they had experienced but were not able to process. So it's the projection of all that hostility, all that shame, whatever that person had experienced. It's essentially like kicking the dog. Someone who is very angry at themselves and had failed in some way, which is healthy shame. People make mistakes. It's human. To err is human. So rather than saying, I made a mistake, I'm working through that, I'm processing it, the person who cannot own up to that kicks the dog, hurts the dogs, hurts the other people, rather than processing it and owning it. So projection is putting all that pathological envy and blame and shifting it onto another so they, in essence, can deal with it, rather than them processing it internally. That is the role of projection, and it is a very lethal tool. But that is something you need to realize, that it's an active defense mechanism that is employed by the narcissist, the covert and overt narcissist, as well as the psychopath. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos help. Please do share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support.